When I walked into the Thanksgiving dinner and saw my daughter-in-law Ashley directing my wife Margaret to eat in the back guest room because important clients were coming, I thought I had reached my limit. My son David just nodded along, avoiding my eyes. Then the doorbell rang. Ashley's CEO and his wife arrived early. The same CEO whose daughter's life my wife had changed 20 years ago. The same woman my son had been deliberately hiding from them for 3 years. I watched Ashley's face drain of color as her boss walked straight past the dining table, heading toward the back room where my wife sat alone in her wheelchair. Let me tell you how we got here. My name is Edward Chen. I am 63 years old. I spent 35 years as a civil engineer, mostly designing bridges and highways across the Pacific Northwest. I retired 3 years ago with a comfortable pension and investments worth about $8 million. But money means nothing compared to what I am about to tell you. This story is about my wife Margaret, the strongest person I have ever known, and about how our only son forgot that he is alive because she sacrificed everything for him. Margaret is 62. Before the accident, she was an elementary school teacher, 3rd grade. She taught for 18 years with the kind of patience and creativity that made children actually excited about learning. She had a gift for reaching the kids others had given up on, the ones with learning disabilities, the ones from troubled homes, the ones everyone else labeled as problems. Margaret saw potential in every single child. 20 years ago, our lives changed forever. David was 15. It was a Saturday afternoon in October. Margaret had picked him up from soccer practice. They were driving home on Highway 101, just outside Seattle. A semi-truck driver fell asleep at the wheel, crossed the median, and headed straight for them. Margaret saw it coming. She had maybe 2 seconds to react. Instead of swerving, which would have put David's side directly in the impact zone, she kept the wheel steady and screamed at David to brace himself. The truck hit the driver's side at 70 miles per hour. I was at home when I got the call. The next 12 hours were the worst of my life. David had a broken arm and a concussion. Margaret had a shattered spine, crushed pelvis, severe internal bleeding, and traumatic brain injury. The neurosurgeon, Dr. Patricia Williams, told me to prepare for the worst. If she survives the night, she said, you need to understand she may never walk again. She may never be the same person. Margaret survived, but the cost was devastating. She was paralyzed from the waist down. The brain injury affected her speech, leaving her with a noticeable slur that made her sound like she had been drinking. Her right hand had limited motor control. For 6 months, she was in the hospital and rehabilitation centers. For 2 years after that, she needed intensive physical therapy just to regain basic independence in a wheelchair. David was 15 when this happened, old enough to understand what his mother had done for him. For the first few years, he was grateful. He helped around the house without being asked. He pushed Margaret's wheelchair when we went out. He told his friends proudly about how his mom had saved his life. He visited her every day in the hospital, doing his homework in the chair beside her bed. But something shifted when David went to college. Maybe it was being around other kids whose parents were younger, more active. Maybe it was the social pressure of wanting to fit in. Maybe he just forgot. He forgot the terror of that moment. He forgot the sacrifice. He forgot that his mother's paralysis was the price of his life. It started small. He stopped mentioning his mother in conversations with new friends. When we visited him at the University of Washington, he would suggest we meet at restaurants off campus instead of him introducing us to his friends. When I asked why, he mumbled something about parking being difficult for the wheelchair. After graduation, David got a job at a tech company in Seattle. Good salary, promising career. He rented an apartment in a building with no wheelchair access. When I pointed out that this meant Margaret could not visit him, he said it was fine. He would just come see us instead. But his visits became less frequent. Once a month became once every 2 months. Then every 3 months. I watched my wife's face every time David made excuses. She never complained, never called him out. She just smiled that patient teacher smile and said he was busy building his career. It was natural. But I saw the pain in her eyes. 5 years ago, David met Ashley. She was 32, a corporate communications director at a major tech firm. Ambitious, polished, and from a wealthy family in California. The first time David brought her to meet us, I knew we had a problem. Ashley walked into our house, and I saw her eyes immediately go to Margaret's wheelchair, to the ramp we had installed, to the modified kitchen. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile you give when you are trying hard not to show discomfort. During dinner, she spoke loudly and slowly to Margaret, as if the paralysis affected her hearing or intelligence. Margaret, being who she was, gently corrected her. "I can hear you fine, dear. My legs don't work, but my ears are perfect. And despite the slur in my speech, I can still conjugate verbs better than most people." Ashley laughed awkwardly. Of course, I didn't mean to suggest otherwise. Over the next year, as David's relationship with Ashley grew serious, the visits became even rarer. And when they did visit, there was always tension. Ashley would make comments that sounded like concern but felt like criticism. "Mrs. Chen, have you considered a speech therapist? I have heard there are wonderful programs now that can really help with clarity." Margaret had been in speech therapy for 3 years. This was as good as it got. "Mr. Chen, have you looked into those new motorized wheelchairs? They are so much more discreet than these old manual ones. Our wheelchair was 2 years old and cost $12,000. I started to speak up, but Margaret would touch my hand under the table, silently asking me to let it go. She did not want to cause friction between David and his girlfriend. 3 years ago, David and Ashley got engaged. The wedding planning was a nightmare. Ashley had opinions about everything, and one of her strongest opinions was about how Margaret should be positioned during the ceremony. "David," Ashley said during one planning meeting, "I have been thinking about the logistics. The ceremony is going to be photographed extensively. Maybe your mom could sit in the second or third row instead of the front row. The wheelchair is quite large, and it might block the view for the photographer." "She can sit wherever she wants," I said firmly. "She is the mother of the groom." Of course, Ashley backtracked quickly. "I just meant for practical purposes. We want everyone to be comfortable." The wedding was 2 years ago. A lavish affair at a resort in Napa Valley, with 200 guests. Margaret wore a beautiful blue dress that Ashley had reluctantly approved after suggesting 3 times that perhaps a shawl would help camouflage the wheelchair. During the ceremony, Margaret was in the front row as I had insisted. But during the reception, I noticed David and Ashley had seated her at a table in the back corner, far from the head table where family was supposed to sit. When I questioned David about it, he said it was because that table had better access for the wheelchair. But I knew the truth. They had hidden her away. After the wedding, David and Ashley moved into a gorgeous apartment in downtown Seattle. 16th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, stunning views, and absolutely not wheelchair accessible. The doorways were too narrow. The bathroom could not accommodate Margaret's needs. When I pointed this out to David, he said they were not planning to entertain much anyway. For 2 years, Margaret did not visit her son's home. Not once. He would come to us every few months, usually without Ashley, and each time I asked when we could see their place, he had excuses. They were renovating. The elevator was broken. It was just not a good time. Last year, Ashley got promoted to Vice President of Communications. She was thrilled, talking constantly about her new responsibilities, her bigger team, her higher profile in the company. And with this promotion came increased social pressure. Ashley started hosting dinners, networking events, gatherings for important clients and executives. She never invited us to any of them. 6 months ago, David mentioned casually that they were thinking about having children soon. Margaret lit up with joy. She started talking about being a grandmother, about how she could still read stories and help with homework even from her wheelchair, about how she had so much to teach a grandchild. "That is wonderful, David," Margaret said, her slurred words full of genuine happiness. "I cannot wait." David smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "We are just thinking about it, Mom. Nothing definite yet." After he left, Margaret cried, quiet tears that she tried to hide from me. I knew what she was thinking. She was wondering if David would let her be part of her own grandchild's life, or if she would be hidden away from them too, the embarrassing grandmother in the wheelchair with the slurred speech. I decided that night that I needed to do something. I called my lawyer and made an appointment. 2 months ago, the situation reached a new low. It was David's birthday. We invited him and Ashley to dinner at our house. Margaret spent all day cooking David's favorite foods, despite how difficult it was for her to maneuver in the kitchen. She made pot roast, mashed potatoes, apple pie from scratch. Everything he had loved since childhood. They arrived an hour late. Ashley was on her phone the entire time, taking work calls, barely acknowledging the effort Margaret had put in. During dinner, She kept checking her watch. I am sorry, but we really cannot stay long, Ashley said. I have an early meeting tomorrow with our CEO. We had not even cut the cake yet. It was 7:30 in the evening. Margaret's face fell, but she forced a smile. Of course, dear. Work is important. David, make sure you take some leftover pie. After they left, Margaret sat in the living room in her wheelchair, staring at the birthday cake she had made, most of it uneaten. I found her crying softly. I cannot do this anymore, Edward. I cannot keep pretending it does not hurt. Then we stop pretending, I said. We confront it. No, Margaret shook her head. If we push him, we will lose him completely. At least this way we see him sometimes. That broke my heart. My wife, who had sacrificed her body, her career, her independence to save our son, was now grateful for crumbs of his attention. The final straw came 3 weeks ago. Ashley called me directly, which was unusual. She had never called me before without David being on the line. Mr. Chen, I need to discuss something sensitive with you. Go ahead. We are hosting Thanksgiving dinner at our place this year. It is important for my career. My CEO and his wife will be there, along with several key clients, and I was hoping that perhaps you and Mrs. Chen might consider celebrating separately this year. I was silent for a long moment, processing what she had just said. You are uninviting my wife from Thanksgiving? Not uninviting exactly. Just suggesting that maybe it would be more comfortable for everyone if you celebrated at home. I can have a lovely meal delivered to you. The rage I felt was cold and calculated. No, Ashley, we will be there. If you are hosting Thanksgiving and David is there, then we will be there too. Mr. Chen, please try to understand. This is a critical moment for my career. The optics need to be perfect. The optics. She was worried about the optics of my wife in a wheelchair. We will be there, I repeated. And if you have a problem with that, maybe you should reconsider whether you are ready to be part of this family. I hung up before she could respond. When I told Margaret, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said softly, Maybe she is right. Maybe I should just stay home. I do not want to cause problems for David. Absolutely not, I said firmly. You are his mother. You saved his life. If he is ashamed of you, then he needs to be confronted with that shame. And if Ashley cannot respect you, then she needs to learn. That brings us to yesterday, Thanksgiving Day. Ashley had sent a message the day before confirming we were still coming, but adding that dinner would be at 6 and we should try to arrive exactly on time because of the other guests. The message felt more like a warning than an invitation. We arrived at 5:45. I pushed Margaret's wheelchair into the lobby of their building. The concierge looked uncomfortable and made a call upstairs before allowing us to use the freight elevator because Margaret's wheelchair would not fit in the regular elevator with other passengers. When we reached their floor, David answered the door. He looked stressed, tie slightly askew, hair not quite in place. Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. Come in. The apartment had been transformed. Expensive decorations, a catered spread on the dining table, soft jazz playing in the background. Ashley appeared from the kitchen wearing a designer dress and a forced smile. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, welcome. She air-kissed near my cheek, without actually making contact. I am so glad you could make it. Margaret looked around at the narrow doorways, the furniture arranged in a way that made wheelchair navigation difficult. We are happy to be here, she said, her slurred words careful and measured. Ashley glanced at her watch. The other guests will be here in about 30 minutes. I have been thinking about the seating arrangements and I wanted to suggest something. She paused, then continued in that same fake cheerful tone. The dining room is a bit tight with the extra chairs, and I thought maybe Mrs. Chen might be more comfortable in the guest room. We have a lovely table set up in there, and you would have more space for the wheelchair. I felt Margaret tense beside me. I am sorry. Did you just suggest my wife eat Thanksgiving dinner alone in a back room? Not alone, Ashley said quickly. David can check on her between courses, and it is really for comfort. The dining room is just so cramped. I looked at David. Are you going to say something about this? My son, the coward, looked at the floor. Dad, maybe it is not a terrible idea. The dining room really is tight, and if Mom is more comfortable. If Mom is more comfortable? I interrupted. David, do you hear yourself? Margaret touched my arm. It is okay, Edward. I do not mind. I do not want to make things difficult. And that was it. That was the moment I realized how far things had deteriorated. My wife, after everything she had endured, was now apologizing for existing in a wheelchair. She was willing to eat alone in a back room so that her son and daughter-in-law would not be embarrassed by her in front of important guests. "Fine," I said coldly, "but I am eating with her." "Mr. Chen, please," Ashley tried. "The CEO is expecting to meet both of you. It will seem odd if you are not at the table." "Then maybe you should not have put my wife in a back room." Before Ashley could respond, the doorbell rang. Her eyes went wide with panic. "They are early." She turned to David. "Get them settled in the guest room quickly." David wheeled Margaret toward the back of the apartment. I followed, my rage building with every step. The guest room was small, barely big enough for the wheelchair and a folding card table that had been set up with a single-place setting. "Is this really happening?" Margaret asked quietly, her slurred words thick with unshed tears. "Not for long," I promised her. I helped her transfer from the wheelchair to the chair at the card table, something she could have done herself. But I needed to be useful somehow, needed to channel my helplessness into action. Through the walls, I could hear Ashley greeting the guests in that bright, fake voice. "Edward, maybe you should go out there," Margaret said. "I do not want you to miss dinner because of me." "I am exactly where I need to be," I said. I pulled out my phone and sent a message to someone I had been hoping I would not need to contact. But circumstances had changed. In the dining room, I heard Ashley doing introductions, heard David's nervous laughter, heard someone ask where David's parents were. I heard David say we were running late, would be there soon. He was out there lying about us while his mother sat alone in a back room. Then I heard a voice I did not recognize, a man's voice, cultured and authoritative. Actually, I was hoping to meet David's mother specifically. "You have mentioned her before, and I wanted to thank her for something from years ago." There was a pause. Ashley's voice confused. "I do not think I have mentioned David's mother." "Perhaps not," the voice continued. "But I know who she is." I heard footsteps approaching the guest room. The door opened, and a man in his late 50s walked in, well-dressed with graying hair and kind eyes. Behind him, Ashley and David were trying to block the doorway, but he ignored them. The man stopped when he saw Margaret at the card table. His eyes went from her face to the wheelchair beside her, and I watched recognition dawn across his features. "Mrs. Chen? Mrs. Margaret Chen?" Margaret looked up, confusion on her face. "Yes?" The man's voice cracked. "It is you. I cannot believe it is you. You taught my daughter 22 years ago. Emily. Emily Bradley. You changed her entire life." Margaret's eyes widened. "Emily Bradley. Oh my goodness. Emily with the dyslexia?" "Severe dyslexia," the man confirmed, tears beginning to form. "Every teacher before you told us she would never read at grade level, that we should lower our expectations. But you spent your lunch breaks with her every single day for 2 years. You got her special accommodations. You fought with the school board to get her the resources she needed. Because of you, she not only learned to read, she fell in love with reading. She is a pediatric occupational therapist now, helping other kids with learning disabilities. Everything good in her life traces back to you." Margaret's hand went to her mouth. "I just did my job. Any teacher would have." "No," the man said firmly. "Not any teacher. Most had given up on her. You saw something in her that no one else saw." He looked around the small guest room, at the card table with one place setting, and his expression hardened. "Why are you in here? Why are you not at the Thanksgiving table?" Before Margaret could make an excuse, I spoke up. "Because my daughter-in-law thought having my wife in a wheelchair at the dinner table would be bad optics for her career. So she asked my wife to eat alone in this back room." The man turned slowly to face Ashley, who had gone completely pale. "Is this true?" "Mr. Bradley," Ashley stammered. "I can explain." "You are Robert Bradley," I said, the pieces falling into place. "Ashley's CEO." "Yes," he confirmed, not taking his eyes off Ashley. "And you put the woman who changed my daughter's life in a back room because of a wheelchair?" "It was not like that," Ashley tried desperately. "It was about space, about comfort. It was about shame," I corrected. "Your shame, my son's shame. The same shame that has kept them from inviting my wife to their home, from including her in their lives, from acknowledging what she sacrificed." "Sacrificed?" Robert Bradley asked. 20 years ago," I said, "my wife pushed our son out of the path of an oncoming truck. The impact left her paralyzed from the waist down and with a traumatic brain injury that affects her speech. My son was 15. He lived because she was willing to pay this price. And now, 2 decades later, he and his wife think she is an embarrassment. David finally spoke, his voice small. "Dad, that is not fair." "Not fair?" I turned on him. "You lied to your guests about where we were. You have been hiding your mother for years. When was the last time you invited us to anything? When was the last time you introduced her to your friends? When was the last time you told anyone the truth about how you are only alive because she sacrificed everything?" "I did not ask her to do that," David said, and immediately realized his mistake. The room went deadly quiet. Margaret made a small sound, like a wounded animal. Robert Bradley's face went from shock to disgusted. "You did not ask her to do that," he repeated slowly. "Young man, I have known your wife for 3 years. I thought highly of her. I promoted her. But if this is the kind of person she is, if this is the kind of man she married, then I have severely misjudged her character." "Mr. Bradley, please," Ashley begged. "This is a misunderstanding." He turned to Margaret, who was crying silently. "Mrs. Chen, I am so sorry. Sorry for what you have endured. Sorry that you have to deal with this appalling disrespect. And I want you to know that Emily talks about you all the time. She named her daughter Margaret. My granddaughter carries your name because you gave my daughter the gift of believing in her." Margaret could not speak through her tears. I squeezed her shoulder. Robert Bradley looked at Ashley one more time. "We will discuss your future with the company on Monday. What I have seen here tonight raises serious questions about your judgment and values." He turned to his wife, who had been standing in the hallway. "We are leaving." After they left, the apartment was silent except for Margaret's quiet crying. The other guests, uncomfortable and confused, made excuses and left quickly. David stood frozen in the doorway. Ashley was crying now too, but I had no sympathy for her. "I need to say something," I announced, "and you both are going to listen." I pulled out my phone and opened the document my lawyer had prepared. 2 months ago, after David's birthday dinner disaster, I had my estate plan revised. Originally, David, you were to inherit everything. Our house, the investment portfolio, my life insurance, Margaret's pension, approximately $8 million in total assets. I watched David's face go white. "The new will divides the estate differently. You now inherit $1 million. The remaining $7 million goes to organizations that support people with disabilities. Specifically, to advocacy groups that fight for accessibility, to scholarship funds for children of disabled parents, and to research for spinal cord injury treatment." "Dad, no," David whispered. "Unless," I continued, "you prove to me over the next 5 years that you understand what your mother did for you, that you treat her with the respect and dignity she deserves, that you are publicly proud of her, not ashamed, that you include her in your life, not hide her away. If you do all of that, if you sustain it for 5 years without falling back into these patterns, then I will consider restoring the full inheritance." 5 years, David repeated numbly. 5 years is nothing compared to the 20 years your mother has lived with the consequences of saving you. If you cannot commit to 5 years of basic decency, then you definitely do not deserve the money. "And me?" Ashley asked in a small voice. "You," I said coldly, "have a choice. You can support David in making these changes, in which case you might have a future in this family. Or you can continue to treat my wife like an embarrassment, in which case you will be cut off completely. No more family gatherings, no more support, nothing." I turned to David one more time. "Your mother has never asked you for gratitude. She has never thrown her sacrifice in your face. She has forgiven your shame, your distance, your excuses over and over again. But I will not watch her heart break anymore. The consequences are real now. The choice is yours." Margaret and I left shortly after. I heard Ashley and David arguing behind us as we waited for the elevator, but I did not care. I had said what needed to be said. The weeks that followed were tense. David called twice, both times crying, apologizing, promising to change. I told him I did not want apologies. I wanted action. A week after Thanksgiving, David showed up at our house, unannounced. He came alone. He sat down across from Margaret in the living room and he cried, "Mom, I am so sorry. For everything. For years of making you feel small. For letting Ashley treat you that way. For forgetting what you did for me." Margaret, being who she was, reached out and took his hand. "David, I love you. I have always loved you." "I know. And I took advantage of that. I knew you would forgive me no matter what, so I just kept doing it." He looked at me. Dad, I want to make this right. Not because of the will, although I would be lying if I said that did not wake me up, but because I finally see how far I had fallen, how much I had become someone I do not want to be. Then show us, I said, not with words, with actions. And he did, slowly at first, but consistently. He came to visit every week, without Ashley initially. He started asking Margaret about her day, about her interests, actually listening to the answers. He brought photo albums and asked about memories from before the accident, about her teaching career, about who she was beyond just his mother. 2 months after Thanksgiving, David called to invite us to dinner, at a restaurant. He had specifically chosen a place that was wheelchair accessible, had confirmed it with the staff ahead of time, had arranged for a table that could accommodate Margaret comfortably. During dinner, he told us what had happened with Ashley. She had been demoted at work. Robert Bradley, true to his word, had removed her from the VP position after what he had witnessed on Thanksgiving. The demotion had been a wake-up call for her, too. She is in therapy, David said, working through why she was so concerned about appearances, where that came from. And she wants to apologize to you both, but she knows she does not deserve forgiveness yet. She needs to earn it. 3 months after that, David came to us with news. He had quit his tech job. He had taken a position with a nonprofit that advocated for disability rights. The pay was half what he had been making, but the work mattered to him. I want to do something that honors what you did, Mom, he explained. I cannot undo my mistakes, but I can try to make sure other people with disabilities are treated better than I treated you. Margaret cried when he told her. Good tears this time. 6 months into the 5-year timeline, Ashley asked if she could visit. David brought her, and she sat down in front of Margaret with genuine humility I had not seen before. Mrs. Chen, I do not expect you to forgive me. What I did was cruel and inexcusable. I let my insecurities and my ambition turn me into someone terrible. But I want you to know, I am working on it. I am in therapy. I am volunteering with disability advocacy groups. I am trying to be better. Margaret listened, then spoke in her slurred but steady voice. Ashley, everyone makes mistakes. The question is what you do after. If you are genuinely changing, then I am willing to give you another chance. It has been a year now. The changes have held. David and Ashley moved to a new apartment, one that is completely wheelchair accessible. They host family dinners there regularly, and Margaret is always at the head of the table. David has started a blog about his experience, about learning to see past disability, about honoring sacrifice. It has gotten some attention, helped other families. Ashley reconnected with Robert Bradley professionally, and while she was not restored to her VP position, he has become a mentor to her. More importantly, he and his wife have become friends with us. Emily, his daughter, came to visit last month. She is 33 now, married with 2 children. She spent hours talking with Margaret about teaching strategies, about how Margaret's methods had shaped her own work with kids. I am the person I am because you saw me when no one else did, Emily told Margaret. You taught me that different does not mean less, that everyone deserves patience and creativity and belief in their potential. Last week, David and Ashley told us they are expecting a baby. A girl. They have already decided on her name. We want to call her Margaret, David said, if that is okay with you, Mom. So she grows up knowing who she is named after, knowing the story of her grandmother's courage, knowing that love sometimes means sacrifice, and sacrifice deserves honor. Margaret cried. I cried. Even Ashley cried. I have not changed the will yet. We are only 1 year into the 5-year timeline, but I am hopeful. For the first time in years, I genuinely believe my son understands. Not because he was told, but because he has lived it, worked with people with disabilities, seen what his mother experiences every day from a new perspective. This story is not over. 5 years is a long time, but what I have learned is that sometimes love requires boundaries. Sometimes protecting someone means implementing real consequences. Sometimes the hardest thing you can do for your child is to force them to see what they have been avoiding. Margaret sacrificed her body, her career, her independence to save David. For 20 years, she asked for nothing in return except his love, and for too long he could not even give her basic respect. But now, finally, he is learning, he is growing, he is becoming the man his mother always believed he could be. If you are listening to this and you have someone in your life who sacrificed for you, do not wait. Do not let shame or social pressure or embarrassment keep you from honoring them. Do not hide the people who love you because they do not fit someone else's idea of perfect. And if you are the person who has been sacrificed for and you have fallen short, it is never too late to change. Never too late to do better. My wife sits in a wheelchair because 20 years ago, she chose our son's life over her own body. That wheelchair is not a source of shame. It is a monument to the purest love that exists. And anyone who cannot see that, anyone who asks her to hide, anyone who treats her as less than, they are the ones who should be ashamed. Thank you for listening to our story.